Welcome to my channel, Living Your Best Life, and I'm Cindy Smaha. We're in our barrier series, and before we get into our topic, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and click that little bell right next to it so you'll be notified of all my future uploads. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Our topic for today is the battlefield of the mind, and I have a special guest for you today. So keep on watching. As I said, I have a very special guest, and his name is Kevin Polky, and he is the founder and executive director of KP Counseling. And Kevin is a licensed clinical social worker. And today our topic is battlefield of the mind, and we'll be discussing depression and how that relates to mental illness. And May was Mental Illness Awareness Month. And to give you a little background, I've known Kevin for 22 years, probably. Not longer than that. It's probably like closer to 25 years. And when we first met, it was at a gym, and you were the football coach at one of the high schools. And I didn't know that he was also a counselor. And so he's now, the founder and executive director of KP Counseling. So that's just amazing how, worlds just sort of connect up again.
Exactly.
Isn't that great?
Yeah,
So,
my hair was this long maybe, but it wasn't gray.
no,
Yeah.
I'm blonde now, so you will never see the gray.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Oh, I appreciate your time here. So, enlighten us on some of the, symptoms of what we're talking about today.
So I think maybe first it's kind of important to kind of think of it from an idea that we're all on a continuum. Mm-hmm. And even from an aspect when we look at from a clinical standpoint, when a person to see if a person meets criteria based upon their symptoms that are presenting to us, we look at it on a continuum. Mm-hmm. So if a person has 7 out of these particular 14 symptoms over a particular time period, which is then looking at their baseline being a certain way, mm-hmm. Now there's been a shift or change. And so we look at everything on this continuum. Now, the interesting thing is that let's say a particular diagnosis is saying we need 7 out of these 14. Mm. Is that then to apply if we have 6 out of the 14, which means we don't qualify for the diagnosis, mm-hmm. but we still have 6 symptoms of the 14. Mm-hmm. Does that person not still need some assistance?
Right, yes.
Yeah. So I think that's probably really for me and for my counselors at KP, mm-hmm. is we want, when people come to us, we want to, we want to hear where they're at, mm-hmm. where their story mm-hmm. is, and the symptoms they're bringing in, which right. then will help us to maybe identify if there is a particular problem going on, and then yes. they may meet criteria. Mm-hmm. But even if they don't, some of the tools that we would give someone, mm-hmm. we still want to be able to share and impart those with them, mm-hmm. because you don't have to be officially diagnosed with something to right. still benefit from some of the tools or techniques that we use right. when someone is depressed. Right. Using that as an example. Or maybe even a better example is what we refer to as anxiety. Mm-hmm. And most individuals, if not all, have experienced a time period where they've worried about something.
Yes.
Worried about a test, worried about a performance, mm-hmm. worried about mm-hmm. someone else, right?
Right.
Well, worry is a symptom of anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, but there's more that is what we look at than just mm-hmm. the state of worry.
Mm-hmm. Or one particular episode, yeah. or a string of episodes.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So, as a general rule, when I'm doing talks in the schools or businesses mm-hmm, or whatever, mm-hmm. and we're talking about what would be something we would look for to need to say, okay, I need to go get medical
yes,
attention.
Right.
So if we think of what is our normal baseline, mm-hmm. Most of us, well, pre-pandemic, we probably yeah. didn't do this, but most of us know what our body temperature should be.
Right.
Right?
Right, yes.
The general rule is 98.6, right?
Right.
But you may run a little bit a little bit less, a little bit more, but that's
Right.
your normal. That's your baseline,
Correct.
right?
Right.
Using this particular instrument to measure where Cindy's at, where Kevin's at,
Right.
that's your baseline.
Mhm.
If you happen to have an elevated temperature
Right.
for 2 weeks in a row,
Mhm.
let's say your normal is 98.6,
Right.
and you've now had an elevated temperature to 100.5
Ooh.
for 14 days, you would naturally go to the doctor.
I'd probably go before that.
Yes, right. And but we seem to understand, and that there's no shame in going. If I
Correct.
have
Right.
a 100.5
Right.
temperature for
Right.
14 days in a row, you would be
Right.
like, why'd you wait so long?
Right. You almost feel justified. It's like, oh, I have a reason.
Yeah.
I have a good enough reason to
Yeah.
go to the doctor. Right.
So if you are off your baseline of how you're feeling,
Mhm.
how you're sleeping, how
Mhm.
you are eating,
Mhm.
either sleeping more or sleeping less,
Right.
eating more, eating less,
Right.
energy level being more or less for
Right.
14 to 21 days in a row,
Right.
that's a long time.
That is
If
a
you
long
compare
time.
it to having a fever.
Right.
We can have a bad day or a bad couple hours in a
Yes.
day.
Right.
Does that warrant going? Maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
But 14 days in a row?
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's when we encourage people to say something else is going on than just your response to this event or this situation.
Right. I know that, for myself and looking at the past, is that sometimes I just didn't recognize that I was in a depression until I was way deep in it.
Mhm.
And so, how can you sort of see some of those warning signs ahead of time?
Well, I think there's a couple things.
Mhm.
One is kind of doing what we're doing right now, is awareness.
Yes.
The more aware that I can be about how depression or anxiety, other forms of mental illness can sneak up on us, that's key for our own self-awareness. Number two, it's the power of community. And
Right.
and so
Right.
am I interacting with people that actually know me, that I'm actually vulnerable and transparent with?
Mhm.
They are also going to give me feedback.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if I have allowed myself to trust them,
Right.
then
Right.
when they go, Kevin,
Right.
you don't seem yourself.
Right.
My normal response, especially if I have something going on, is to go, no, I'm fine.
Right.
Because the depression or the anxiety is telling me that, what's going on. Most of the time we say that depression, anxiety, those two specifically, are going to tell Kevin lies.
Right.
Cindy's not going to understand.
Right.
I've already tried that once before.
Right.
It's no big deal. Why are you making a big deal of it?
Yeah, don't tell your boss, then they're going to think you're weak or whatever. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
And this idea that I feel that something's wrong, but the depression or anxiety is translating in my mind that Kevin must be wrong. There's something wrong with Kevin.
Right.
Not a symptom is wrong with Kevin,
Right. Yeah.
but Kevin as a person.
Right.
And we refer to that as shame.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think, some of that too is that, sort of I think the time period, like when I grew up, I mean, you didn't go to the doctor unless you were almost bleeding to death, and the thoughts of therapy, I didn't even know about therapy until I got a lot older.
Yeah.
So, I think there was a lot of shame. I know there's still shame in it. And so how do we sort of break that cycle, or how do we let others know, like our audience here today, how do we let them know?
It's interesting you say that. I agree with you 100%. And one of the initial ways is doing what we're doing right now, right?
Yes,
just
right.
talking about it. And one of the objectives that I wanted to do when I started KP was really break down the stigma that's associated not only with mental illness, but equally as much with seeking assistance.
Correct.
So when I started KP, and I looked at the population that I wanted to work with, and I wanted to help people, and my way of helping was through like I was doing with coaching.
Yes.
Being able to, I knew when I used to be a personal trainer back when I was bodybuilding, when I was coaching football or whatever, I knew that I could teach someone how to lift weights.
Yeah.
But what they really needed from me after they learned how to do it was the inspiration and the motivation and the accountability.
Right.
So really, I was more of a motivational coach than I was even a technique coach.
Right. A cheerleader.
Yep.
Yes.
And so it was not only encouraging them along, right, but it was then also catching them when they might have been doing something maybe a little off, but then also catching them when they were also doing something above and beyond, of what they even thought they could do. And that made me think, well, why can't counseling be the same way? Why can't therapy be the same way? And remind me, I'll come back to the counseling and therapy differential.
Okay, good. Yes.
But and it was really, how do we we joke and say that at KB we joke and say occasionally someone mentally ill will show up.
Gotcha.
And because we're just ordinary people who have some kind of obstacle in their life, some kind of thing that they're struggling with, or they find themselves have done life a certain way for a certain length of time, and now it appears not to be working the way it was before. And we're just talking. We're just talking. There's no shame when in sports your son seems to have a really strong arm, has really strong accuracy as a pitcher. There's no shame in getting him a pitching coach to specialize in what he's doing. Right. Actually, you're considered a good parent if you do that.
That's right.
To give him extra help or give her extra help with doing it. Counseling's kind of the same way. Right. So that's, I think for me, that's what we're trying to do to contribute, of trying to break that stigma. That's why I do the public, the talks that I do and the workshops that I do. How do we normalize it, and how do we look at it, how it could be beneficial across the board, regardless of how severe someone's struggle could be, or maybe how minor it could be.
Right, yeah, because you explained before we were on camera about that continuum and about the percentages.
Yep.
And I don't quite remember.
Yeah, that's okay. So statistically, and I know that it may have changed now as of more recent, because we have more people seeking assistance now since the pandemic than before. It's up 6 to 7%. 6 to 7% it has increased. People reporting seeking mental health assistance, behavioral health assistance. Wow. But prior to that, the research was pretty consistent that 25% of our population in the United States has identified that with some type of mental illness, has reported some type of mental illness. Right. Which then means that 75% of our population has not reported that. Right. But is that to imply that they haven't worried, haven't been sad, haven't been down over some type of loss or change or something like that? So we really wanted to not only be available for the people that would meet the criteria for the 25%, but then also provide resources and be a resource for the whole continuum.
Right. Yes. And I keep thinking about, people who struggle, and then, unfortunately, there are people who struggle and they find the only option would be suicide. I know this wasn't part of the topic, but I think it sort of segues into it, and that, sometimes, and I see your sign right over there, Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and, sometimes people don't even show any signs or symptoms of it, or they're sort of masked. And so, what is the correlation between what we've been talking about and suicide? Is there?
Well, I'll give another example of the continuum. Okay?
Yes, right.
One of the tools that I've created for my staff, as well as for when we're working with clients, is this idea that we all are on this continuum, and one end of the continuum is the brightest of bright lights. Right. And at the other end of the continuum is the complete absence of light. The brightest of bright lights represents love, hope, and joy. Yes. The absence of light, the darkest of dark, represents hopelessness, despair, and when someone's there, they think that maybe their life would be less painful if they weren't here. Right. So, and we're all in this continuum.
Right, yes. Mm-hmm.
There's certain factors that can lead to, especially if those factors happen prior to the age of 18, could
Yes.
lead to us in this darkness.
Yes.
Because of those formative years, if a
Yes.
person's been sexually assaulted
Right.
and not had assistance,
Right.
meaning counseling,
Mm-hmm.
if a person's been bullied but no intervention,
Yes.
if a person is struggling with eating disorder or body image or been a
Right.
victim of domestic violence, has a chemical imbalance of a
Mm-hmm.
mental illness, or
Mhm.
if there's been substance abuse or they've been
Mm-hmm.
having some, all those could be factors, or in another world,
Right.
the education world, adverse childhood experiences
Right.
could lead to this predisposition to being in the darkness.
Right.
Along with that, same continuum, I've broken it down in that one step, let's say, to that darkness, to the right, would be sadness, which is a normal experience that we have.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit farther to the right is feeling depressed or down,
Yeah.
or bummed out.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit farther is a sense of hopelessness.
Right.
A little bit farther to the right, if that continues, we may find ourselves in what we refer to as death ideation. In other words, I think maybe my life would be better if I don't wake up tomorrow.
Right.
If we stay there too long without intervention, without doing anything,
Right.
that will then lead to the fact that maybe it's better if I consider taking my own life. And then we start looking at, usually then the person over time, if not intervened with,
Mm-hmm.
then a person might start looking at that intent grows, that those thoughts
Mm-hmm.
start growing, and intent grows, and then they start looking at what the plan is.
Right.
And then they start looking at a means for that plan.
Right.
So obviously the farther we're down here, the more, and again, another statistic, but 90% of the time when someone's contemplating suicide,
Yeah.
they have some form of depression.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so we know that depression, anxiety will distort our thinking and lie to us.
That's
So the farther someone's down here,
Mm-hmm.
the more risky it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that intervention needs to happen, so that
Mhm.
we can break
Mm-hmm.
through that lie.
Right.
So again, critically important about education.
Yes.
What is it about this continuum? What are those
Mhm.
factors? What to
Mhm.
look for? Those
Mhm.
things that we've just
Yes.
been talking about. Not only for me to be able to tell on myself,
Yes.
but for me as a significant other or bystander to ask you about.
Correct.
I've
Right.
noticed that you haven't been answering the phone.
Right.
I've noticed that you seem down.
Right.
No, I've been fine. I don't, doesn't seem like it.
Mm-mm.
Seems like
Yeah,
something's
right.
going on.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
and so, not accusatory,
Right.
but more curious.
Right.
Asking those questions about,
Right.
or if someone says something like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, they were lucky. That person that died the other day, they were
Mhm.
lucky. Well, what do you mean, Cindy?
Yeah. Right.
What
do you mean?
oh, nothing.
Yeah.
You said it.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about this. Right. Yeah.
Again, non-judgmental,
Right.
not being critical, just
Right.
curious.
Right. Yeah.
And then if the person goes, yeah, I've been thinking that maybe maybe I should
Yeah.
not be here. Then we go, maybe we need to call the hotline. Maybe we need to
Yeah,
go
right.
and say, hey, Cindy, I'm going to bring, I got a friend.
Yeah. Right.
Let's make a phone call.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think, like you were saying, is for us to be aware and to pay attention. And I know when I did the series before on generosity, is that some people, we have the idea of I'm too busy.
Mhm.
I just don't have time for it. And they've got a husband, they've got a mother, they're okay with that. And I think when we take a step back and go, I'm involved in their life, even if it is like, at the school where I work, even if it's a student I see regularly, I still care about them.
Mhm.
And to take that, what I call is that vulnerability, that leap of vulnerability that says, hey, I just want you to know I care about you.
Mhm.
And that you're important to me.
Mhm.
And if you want to talk about this, I so want to, talk to you about it, But to open ourselves up to that vulnerability ourselves, but it doesn't cost us anything.
Mhm.
Just like generosity, it doesn't cost us anything. If anything, that helps us to walk outside of ourselves, because I think we all walk around in our little bubble that says, don't mess with me, I'm too busy, but I think when we break that bubble and go, well, yeah, I'm busy, but what's the most important thing here? Is it about other people, or is it about whether or not I wash the dishes?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think you had a great point, and many times, and I can easily fall in this category, right? So I have offices up in Wisconsin,
yes.
and sometimes it's a 2-hour commute, sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's
right,
less.
yeah.
And there's times that will fly by if I'm talking on the phone, or if I'm listening to a podcast or something like that.
Right, yeah.
I will notice that I didn't notice anything on the way.
Right.
Wasn't paying attention.
Right.
Because I was focused on, I was driving, but I was focused on, what the conversation was, or whatever, what I was listening to, or whatever it might have been. I guess we utilize it as a coping mechanism, or to get things done, or multitask, or whatever it is.
Right.
But I didn't see anything on the side of the road as I was driving. I didn't notice the leaves.
Right.
I didn't notice the person on the side of the road.
Right.
I didn't see anything, because I was so busy going from point A to point B.
Right.
Now, the truck stayed the same speed the whole time.
That's what he says.
It's true.
It's in cruise.
Yeah, exactly. But I could either mindfully be driving that,
right,
and see what I'm driving around,
right,
or I could just be busy,
right,
and next thing I know, I'm home.
Correct.
And so, I know for me, there's times when I have to have those phone calls, and I choose to have those phone calls because of the necessity at the time.
Right.
And other times, when I'm leaving at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I can't make those phone calls, and I can watch the sunrise,
yes,
and I can see the difference between spring getting ready to turn into summer, summer turning into fall.
Right.
I'm seeing a completely different experience.
Right.
Do I do that with my wife? Do I do that with my kids?
Right.
Or am I thinking that getting the dishes done is so more important?
Right. Well, I obviously don't.
Yeah.
Right. So, but
So I think it's really about, for individually for me, about how do I just be present. And if I'm being present, and we talk about this all the time with my therapist, our responsibility as counselors is to be present and then get out of the way. We are vessels for something greater than ourselves to work through.
Right. Yes.
We never heal anyone.
Right.
We're just vessels for something greater than ourselves to help the person who's across from us.
Right.
So we don't have to have the answers. We don't have to figure it out.
Right.
But our thinking will get in the way.
Right.
And so many times we have to remind ourselves that our job, our responsibility is just to create space to be present. And so I believe that's what counseling's about. I believe that's what counseling and therapy is really about, is just being able to create space for the other person. And if I can then do that same thing for the people in my personal life,
yes,
or non-clients,
yes,
then Kevin can be a better resource for others.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway for that is that we can be that vessel of love and hope to someone else. Not that we have answers, and not that I can fix somebody, because I can't fix myself, and so I'm not here to fix anyone. But I always think of that, if I could be a love dispenser and a hope dispenser, and to, because there have been many, many years where I was hopeless and despair and depressed and all that, and how going to a therapist and speaking to someone else for years has helped me. And so I'm so grateful for that time, and now it's like I know that helped me. So if I get into that place again, I'm okay with getting into that again, because it ultimately it comes down to, I want to live my best life,
Yep.
you know, and so that's why I want, you know, people in my channel to know that, you know, living your best life for me isn't always about me.
Mhm.
It's about how can I be that love dispenser, hope
Mhm.
dispenser, grace dispenser, you know, cheerleader for someone else, because that ultimately brings it back to me.
Yep.
And I guess, you know, as we think about it, is there anything that you can maybe leave us with on how, like, family and friends can help the loved ones in our life that are, you know, maybe struggling, you know, with, you know, mental illness, depression, you know, those things.
So you said something earlier. I know the theme is living your best life, right?
Yes,
and,
right.
And going back to this idea of mental health,
Yes.
and looking at mental health similar to our physical health.
Yes. Yes.
So I have been lifting weights since I was 11 years old. So for 42 years. I think I just slid in there my age.
Yeah, I think so.
And for
I don't
42
do math
years,
anymore.
yeah. So for 42 years, I've been lifting weights, and it started off at home working out when I was 11, and currently I work out at home. But a lot of time in between was at a gym.
Right.
And that's really my point now, is that when you go to it, when I went to the gym, right,
Yes.
I didn't go to the gym in particular because I was overweight, wanted to lose weight, or I was trying to gain weight or whatever. I was going there to be the best, initially the best football player I could be, the best wrestler I could be, then later bodybuilding. But I was always in some form trying to be the best version of Kevin.
Right.
It wasn't because there was some pathology driving me there.
Right.
The other thing that I really gained, especially early on in my life, is that there was people in the gym, in the community of the gym, that knew more about lifting weights and about nutrition and all those things than I did.
Right.
And they brought me under their wing.
Yeah.
Not only did they mentor me, but then I also had a lot of individuals that were asking about me. Not only as someone who lifted weights, but asking me about as a person.
Right. Yes.
That community and then that accountability gave me a place to go. So even if I didn't feel like going to work out, I would go because I had a workout partner.
Right.
I think metaphorically, if we think of that in life, who's my community?
Right.
Who really knows me?
Right.
Who am I investing in?
Right.
Not just I'm investing in them, like I'm their coach or I'm their counsel,
Right.
but who am I investing in with giving me?
Right.
Then when I have something happen, when I'm struggling, when I'm down, then they are going to know enough about me to be a resource to me.
Right.
And maybe, like we were talking earlier, I may no, I'm good.
Right.
But if the relationship has been authentic enough, and I've been vulnerable enough, then they're not going to let that go.
Right.
And likewise, I won't with them.
Right.
And so I think that's because I won't have those when I'm at my worst or on my way to my worst is not when I'm going to necessarily be able to start building those relationships.
Right. Yeah.
I need to build those relationships when I'm not at this end of the continuum.
Right. Yes.
But when I'm more in here.
Right. Yes.
So they can be a resource, or I can be a resource for when this does happen.
Right.
So I think community is huge.
It is.
Aspect of it. It's also a whole lot more fun sometimes.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Life is more fun together. Yes. Right.
And that's not to say I am that person that needs as much solitude, if not sometimes more than I need time with my community.
Right. Yes.
But I also need to listen well enough to me, to me, to know when I need to unplug.
Right. Yes.
and that's but then also when I need to plug in.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And so, I want to sort of wrap up and sort of, let the individuals that are watching this video, and I just feel led from the heart to let you know that you are cared for. and you are loved, and you are important enough to take care of yourself, and that there are people around you who truly love you and want to be there for you. And so I hope what you take away from this video is that it's not your fault, and you didn't decide to be depressed. You didn't make yourself have a mental illness or be struggling, but that there is help for you. And we've all needed help. Everyone needs help, whether they admit it or not. Most of us have taken that leap and met with a counselor and have been better for it. So I really hope that you leave a comment maybe on how you've been helped. And I will be leaving the link to KP Counseling, to their website, in the description box. And I hope this video helped you in some way. And I hope that you come back next week, where we're going to wrap up the barrier series, where I talk honestly about a few things. So be back next week at 4 o'clock on Monday. So have a great week. Bye-bye.